Hi, I'm Eric Steinborn. I'm from DCJS. We have all of the slides for my presentation will be on the website, and I'm also recording the presentation for anybody who doesn't have access to today's meeting, so we'll have that. The recorder's down here, so you don't have to worry about being in the camera or anything. So just to give you a little introduction, I think jQuery is really awesome. jQuery really helps me do a lot of really cool interactivity, AJAX stuff, animations, effects, all kinds of stuff that I would normally have a really hard time doing with plain old JavaScript. jQuery makes that really easy. And the last couple times that I've come here, we've had some people presenting and they've done some really great stuff, but a lot of it isn't really teaching me new things. It's teaching me why this thing that I should be learning about is good. So what I'm here to teach you guys today is the actual process of learning jQuery and actually getting some skills behind it so that you guys can start using jQuery on your sites. And yeah, so here we go. So just a quick poll. Who here uses JavaScript on their sites? All right, and out of you guys, who uses JavaScript every single day? So a lot less. And who uses a framework, say Dojo, MooTools, Prototype, and who actually uses jQuery on their sites? All right, very cool, very cool. So just to give you a little introduction about me, I am kind of strange, so I might be moving around a little bit. So try to keep up. I'm an IT2 at DCJS. I have about 15 years of experience with web technologies. That's everything from HTML3 all the way up to 5, where we're dealing with now, trying to get all our browsers up to date so that everybody can support it. I know it's a long way away, 2022, I think they said. I work in a group of 3 people. They couldn't make it today because we actually just upgraded our site spender management search and it's broken. So they're doing damage control. And I mostly do intranet. That's my main job. Is I take care of what we call DCJSNet, which is our internal website. That's where everybody knows what an intranet is. But recently, because we've been expanding more with our internet, I've been really digging deep into our internet sites and helping out with our extranet, eJustice, which is what the police officers use for fingerprints and stuff like that. Some of the things that I'm really good at, CSS, JavaScript, blah, 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 you get it. And underneath there that says, I do what I love, so I love my job. I absolutely love my job. It is the best job that I've ever had. So let's get into jQuery. What is it? It is an open source JavaScript framework that simplifies cross-browser client-side scripting. What does that mean? Well, that means it helps me make animations really easily. It helps me manipulate the DOM. It helps me do AJAX requests. It helps me with extensibility through plugins, because it is there are so many plugins that you'd be completely dumbfounded to see how many plugins there actually are. It was created by John Resig in January of 2006, and it's currently released. The most current release is 1.4.2. It's exploded in popularity since 2006. It is. So I'll start from the bottom here. It's the most used JavaScript library on the internet. For all sites that use JavaScript on the web, 39% of those sites, which is vastly superior than any other framework, 39% of the sites on the web that use use JavaScript use jQuery to do their JavaScript. jQuery is really, really easy to learn. If you know CSS, you know how to pull elements out of your web page with jQuery. It's that easy. It's super small. It's 71 kilobytes, minified, but not gzipped. And if your server supports gzip, which ours don't, so ours is 71 kbytes. But if your servers support gzipping, it's 24 kilobytes gzipped. So it's super, super small, and so it loads really quickly. It's very well documented. The website is api.jquery.com. Remember that, because that will be your very best friend. And it's very well supported. If you have a question, it will get answered 90% of the time. I can't say 100% because who am I to guarantee anything, right? But the biggest thing that I think is that it's cross-browser compatible. it has IE6 support built right in, and John Resig has been quoted in saying that he will die before IE6 support is taken out of jQuery. Because the problem with IE6 support is that all the problems that were in IE6 JavaScript are in IE7 JavaScript. So IE7 JavaScript actually introduced more problems. So what's going to happen is IE7 support, if you remove IE6 support, you remove IE7 support. So as long as IE7 is still an important browser in the terms of the usage, jQuery will support it. I absolutely love the jQuery community. Recently, we just did a redesign on our home page because our PIO wanted us to. Actually, our commissioner wanted us to redesign the entire website because she didn't like it. And so what we decided to do was let's really pump up the front homepage. So what we did is we put a really cool feature slider on it, and it's got a nice big image with text, and it's got buttons that go left and right all through jQuery. And what we decided was because we deal with missing children and because we deal with Amber Alerts, we wanted to make sure that when there was an Amber Alert, because before we redid the page, there would be a tiny little icon, maybe about the size of two, like this, right on your page. It was very, very small, and it basically said missing child alert, and you clicked on that, and it brought you to a PDF. Well, the PDF doesn't work on old BlackBerry browsers. So we said, all right, what are we going to do? So I said, what I'm going to do is we're going to take the new page that we created, which is an HTML page, and I'm going to AJAX request from the home page when there's a missing child alert. And I'm going to pull that child's image, I'm going to pull that child's name, I'm going to pull where that child came from, and I'm going to put it on the home page. And I'm going to show you right on the home page in a giant thing in the center of the page that there's a missing children. And I had a heck of a time trying to get that done. So what I did was I went on to forums.jquery.com and I asked the question. I said, hey, I really need help with this. I asked the question at 4:42 p.m. It was answered by Adam Sontag from the jQuery podcast. I'll explain that in a second. In 13 minutes. My really, really hard question that I could not get no matter what everything. I was pulling up undefined in the kid's image on my page. He answered my question in 13 minutes. I can now span as many children as I want on the home page. If we have 20 missing kids on the home that end up being missing, you can now see them on the home page, and they will cycle through and everything because of Adam Sontag. The jQuery podcast, if you guys are interested in learning about jQuery, the jQuery podcast is a really great podcast. It's done by 4 guys, including Adam Sontag. It does have an explicit tag, so they drop the F-bomb and the S-bomb every once in a while. Nothing like terribly, terribly explicit. So, if you have kids around, listen to it with headphones. Now, jQuery, like I said, it is huge. It is absolutely enormous. 39% of people that use JavaScript on the web use jQuery. Now, if you see up there, there's a little jQuery UI that's actually 4.17%. That's actually another part of jQuery. It's like a set of plugins that are built in, like tabs, accordion panels, sliders, all kinds of different cool dialog boxes, awesome stuff. The next closest actual framework is Prototype, which is at a 6.66%. Strange number, I know, but it's just that's how much jQuery has in terms of competition. It is just destroying everyone. Now, just a little information about who actually uses jQuery. You can see the list on their site, docs.jquery.com/sites using jQuery. Microsoft just announced a huge, huge thing where they're actually going to be contributing actual raw source code to jQuery. So what they're not like bad Microsoft code, because Microsoft wants IE6 to die as well. They've actually been quoted saying that they don't want the web having to be back in in the 90s or when was like 2001, right? I think. Yeah, they don't want the web back then. They want the web at IE9. They want everybody to upgrade to IE9 when IE9 comes out. But unfortunately, because people like us, where we're locked behind the technical limitations of training everybody to use all these new browsers, they So what they want to do is they want to help get jQuery to be a better thing. They've actually included they've actually proposed a couple new plugins, like a templating plugin and some sort of data plugin. I can't remember. I don't really like the templating plugin because it screws up your SEO, but that's just me. Now, in New York, who uses jQuery? Alcohol and substance abuse, CIOFT, we use it, criminal justice, labor, MTA, Port Authority. This is just a list of a couple people that I found just by browsing the governor's website to see who uses jQuery across New York. So I mentioned the DOM before. I'm going to go really briefly into the DOM because we're all web people. We all pretty much know what the DOM is. It's the document object model. It's basically everything from your doc type to your ending HTML tag. It's everything inside of your document. That includes all your script tags, all your images, CSS, everything that you have on your HTML page or PHP page or what have you, however you do it, that's your DOM. Now, jQuery runs best when the DOM is ready, because what happens is if you try to say, all right, I want to grab this P tag off the page and I want to do something with it, and it hasn't gotten to that P tag because it loads top to bottom, it doesn't know where it is, and it goes, oh, sorry, nothing happens, and then move along. So how do we make sure that the DOM is ready? Well, you wrap all of your jQuery code inside of what's called the document ready function, which is $ in parens document.ready, and then we surround in parens function, and then we open up curly braces and we put all of our sweet jQuery code inside of there. I'll explain a shorthand for that later. I'm all about making things fast. I'm all about performance optimization. There's actually a quicker, shorter way that cuts a couple bits out of your page to load the document ready. So what if you don't do that? Well, about 90% of the time, your code doesn't actually work. Your code will just sit there and it will do nothing. You try to find something, it says, oh, it's not there. Sometimes it'll throw an error even. But jQuery is really good at degrading itself. Now, about 9% of the time, I've had this happen, the code will actually work, the page will load, everything will work fine, and then I refresh the page, and then I go back to number 1. It just doesn't work. The other option is that it opens up a wormhole and transports your page back to 1990, revolutionizing the web as we know it. While seemingly great, it also creates a paradox and destroys the universe. Now, that has yet to be fully verified, and number 1 is probably closer to about 99%. So make sure that you wrap your code, your jQuery code, in the document ready function. All right, I get it, you're a geek. Okay, you're about to get a wedgie. So let's get to the jQuery. So, loading jQuery. What you want to do is you go to jQuery.com and they have a big download button right on there. You can download the 71 KB jQuery code in minified, put it on your server, and then reference it in a script tag. So script src and wherever you have your jQuery. You can also load it, which is it's about, if you load it from Google, Google has like a 99.98% uptime or something. There is that little bit that they don't have enough time. But the thing is that a lot of people are using these CDNs that Google is providing or Microsoft is providing. They're already minified and they're already gzipped, so you're only loading 24 KB from those places. Plus, you can load from there while you're still loading stuff on your site as well, because you're able to have multiple requests to different places. So loading jQuery is really awesome. We load it at DCJS locally because we have trust issues. So now we want to load our scripts at the bottom of the page because when you load scripts, they block everything else that's being downloaded. So if you're loading, if you load your scripts in the head of your document, which is what we were all told back in the old days of the web, they said load everything up at the top because you don't want to load everything at the bottom. Because we all thought, at least I did, that script had to be inside of head because that's just how it had to go. No, load it right before your closing body tag. You first load up jQuery, and then you load up any plugins that you have, and then you load in your empty script tag with, well, it doesn't end up empty, but it has all your jQuery code inside of there. So let's get to it. Okay. So what we do is we have this is a very basic, most basic thing pretty much you can probably do in jQuery, which is I have a p tag inside that says hello world. I'm Eric, and what I want to do is I want to add the class of isCool to it. All right. So what I do is I call $, and in parentheses and in quotations You can use single or double, just like JavaScript. Just make sure you end one, start one, end one, start one, end one. And then I call a built-in method called add class, which is built into jQuery. And then inside of that, I add a class of isCool. Now you'll notice that with CSS, you would normally have .isCool, but you're not actually adding .isCool. jQuery understands what add class means, and it understands that it's going to, because what it's actually going to do is it's actually going to create a space after your p tag, and it's going to create class equals, and in parentheses, like it should, isCool. Now if you put add class .isCool, it would actually add p class equals .isCool, and we all know that that's not valid. So let's give you a little demo of that here. So here's the code. We have p add class isCool. Now this is the starting code. This is just a code block to show you what it looks like. This is the actual code that this is outputting. Now when I add this, it's going to add a really cool style to it. So I clicked that, and now it made my text blue. It gave me a cool dotted green underline and an awesome 2-pixel red border on the top of it. That's what I defined in my CSS as my isCool class. So it's as easy as that. Now, I did it on click here. All of my examples I show I'm doing it on click just to show you the before and after. Now, if you just put p add class isCool on your main code, okay, and you didn't put it in any sort of click function, what would happen is it would immediately apply it as soon as it got to that code in the page. And it all depends on how much stuff you have going on in your page, but that can look completely instantaneous. Like, you may not even see the original hello world error text in black text. You might see it as soon as the page loads as this. There might not even be a flash, but that's not guaranteed. So you just want to just be aware that it doesn't happen like that all the time. So let's break down the actual request. So what we do is, as you see here, I wrote the shortcut for the document ready function, which is $ open paren function, and then open bracket, and then at the bottom here I have the ending bracket and the ending parenthesis, ending it with a semicolon like you would normally do with the JavaScript thing. So the actual $ equals the text jQuery, lowercase j, uppercase q. Now what that does is that tells the browser that I'm now going, because it's already loaded JavaScript, or already loaded jQuery, it's telling the browser, all right, I'm going to start something with jQuery now. Then what I do is I use a CSS selector to grab a DOM element. Then you'll see that the selector is in quotes. If I wanted to grab something that was a class, I would use .isCool. And it creates what's called a jQuery collection. Now, I've actually been calling add class a function for probably the last 2 years that I've been working with jQuery, and I found out yesterday that it's called a method. So I went through and I changed all my slides and changed it to method instead of function. So we call the add class method, and then we surround the class that we want to add to it. We surround it in double quotes or single quotes again. Just make sure, I always use single quotes just because it looks nicer to me. And we end it with a semicolon at the end here. So what that does is that's our entire code that pulls in the add class. So let's see. So we have your basic selectors. Like I say, just like CSS. You want to select the p tag, you hit p. You want to select a div, you hit div. You want to do something with an ID of foo, you do #foo. If you want to do something with a class, you do .foo. Now, this will apply, especially with p and div, this will apply to every p on the page and every div on the page. So your best bet is to, if you want to specifically, like I said, on our home page, we have our feature block where we have all the different sliding images, whatever. That has an ID of feature block. So I call that with jQuery with, in parentheses, in quotes, #feature block. And then that specifically targets the feature block on the page, and it doesn't touch anything else on the entire page. So we did this before. We add class, and your before is just a plain old regular plain Jane P, and then your ending is class equals sophisticated. We added the sophisticated class to that. I won't show you that demo because we basically already saw that. Now let's remove a class. Another built-in method of jQuery. It's as simple as add class was, except now it's remove class. To remove class, we grab our element or DOM element by calling $. To initiate our jQuery function, inside parentheses and inside quotes, we use our CSS selector. In this case, it's P, and then we do .remove class when we remove the class sophisticated. So we start with P class sophisticated, and we end with class equals blank string. Right? Now, let's say that this P tag had another class, and let's call it gentleman. Okay, so this P was a sophisticated gentleman. Now we remove the class sophisticated. This P would now be P class equals gentleman. So it would still keep all of the other classes that were attached to the DOM element, and so you're able to add and remove things dynamically. Another built-in method of jQuery is the show method. Show method. Then there's also a hide method as well. So what we do is before we have a div with a display of none on it. Normally we all know that we would use CSS classes to have this. So we would have div class equals hidden, right? And now we do a show on it. It changes style to display block. A very good thing to note is that show and hide methods are very, very slow. They are very function heavy. They pull a lot of jQuery functions, or just JavaScript functions, or JavaScript calls, I should say. If you have Firebug, you should install Firefox. You should install Firebug, and you should look at your console, and you can actually log and see how many responses are being done on there. I'll post that on the new forums when we get all that set up. That's a really good way to see how fast your jQuery code is performing. So in this case, instead of using show and hide, I would use add class hidden, remove class hidden, because that will just add the CSS is all done in the background, so you're not having all this JavaScript punching in and taking all your stuff and removing it from the DOM and putting it back onto the DOM. So now I want to grab this P with an ID of Eric, and right now it says Eric is lame. Well, I want Eric to be cool, so what I do is I pull in a built-in jQuery method called text, and inside of text I feed it a string of is cool. So before I start off with is lame, after I run my jQuery function, I end up with is cool. I'll show you a little demos of these ones here. So this is our add class, remove class, sophisticated. So this is our P that we're targeting here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add class sophisticated. Now it's blue italics and it has an orange text shadow. Now if I remove class, all it's going to do is it's going to make it go back to that same text that it was before. So now it doesn't have the style attached to it that says make me blue, make me italic, make me have an orange text shadow. Now the hide and seek here. So what we have is we have our div that has a display none. This is showing up, right? Yeah, okay. And then when I hit show, it's actually shown right here because this is where it was. But the reason it pushed this down was because it wasn't there before. It wasn't being calculated in the DOM. Now that it's being calculated and Firefox says, oh, this is here, it pushes everything else down. Again, I'm using Firefox because that's what I made sure that everything is working in. But if I open this up in IE, chances are it would probably load almost 100%. I'd probably say, because I don't trust IE, probably loads about 99%, and I'd have to just have a couple of IE 6 or 7 tweaks. So now what we're going to do is this same one here, we're going to target this P with an ID of Eric by calling #Eric inside of our selection. And then I click this, now it changes the text to Eric is cool. So I am cool now. So one of the cool things about jQuery, one of the millions of cool things, but cool thing in this sense is you can chain events together. So instead of just calling, p.addClass sophisticated, semicolon. P dot text, hello world, semicolon. Next line, P dot show. Every single time, instead of ending with a semicolon, I end with the next method. So I call dot add class. Next, I call dot text. Next, I call dot show. Now I'm done with my chain. I don't want to do anything else, so I end it with a semicolon. Now, you see I separated it on multiple lines. You'll see that happens a lot with, that's just code formatting. That's how it looks nice. So this could all just be written in one big long string of text, but unfortunately, the screen isn't that big. So I couldn't do that. Now, click events are really awesome. Click events are probably the bread and butter of what I do in jQuery. Now, if I have, let's say I have an anchor tag with an ID of Eric, and I want to, when I click that, I want to change the text to is cool, and I want to throw up a JavaScript alert, which is terrible practice. You always want to use Firebug and console.log. I can talk about that later. And I want to send out an alert that says, take that high school, right? So what this does is this, in order to create the click, encapsulate what I want to run in the click, I call dot click, and then instead of normally where you would see inside of parentheses or outside without parentheses, just in your quotations, and just in the parentheses you'd have your code. Instead of doing that, what I'm doing is I'm creating an anonymous function. So I call function, and then I have inside my curly braces I have the code that I want to run. Now, by doing this, when I click on that whatever it is that has an ID of Eric, this will happen. I can call this on a P tag. I can call this on a div. Things that you're not supposed to actually be able to click, I can call click on. I can call click on anything in the DOM that I can select. Now, what I want to do, though, is I want to make sure that when I click on this, this would normally send me to index.html. I don't want to go to index.html. I just want it to change the text of the thing that I just clicked to is cool, and I want to send out an alert of take that high school. So what I do is I create this, I add event inside of the function call to create an attribute, and then at the end of all of my code, I add event.preventDefault, and that's a I'm pretty sure that's a JavaScript thing. I don't think that's a jQuery thing. It might be. I'm not sure. Again, I'm not the most brilliant person in the world. I'm awesome, but I'm not super great. So what I do is with that event.preventDefault, what that does is I just call event because I called it at the top. I could call that ABCD inside that function initialization, and then call ABCD. But what that does is that prevents the default action. So whatever that href value is set to, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm just doing what I tell it to do. Now, if I don't add event.preventDefault in there, and I just keep the top function in place, what'll happen is it will perform that thing that I told it to do. It'll change the text to is cool. It will send up my alert, but then it'll also go to index.html. So, and chances are, depending on what you have it doing, you may not even see that happen before it shoots you into that next spot. So, event.preventDefault is your very best friend. So, just to show you that here, this is our chaining events together. So we have a P that's hidden. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the text to hello world. As you see, the P was empty before. We change the text to hello world. We add the class sophisticated to it, and we show it. That's how that happened. So what we have here, this is our click event. So this actually says Eric is lame. So what we do is we say .click. We initiate our click function. Return false. This is the same thing as doing event.preventDefault, but it's just don't even look at that. All right, let's just pretend that doesn't exist. We'll pretend that says event.preventDefault, because return false does about the same thing, but it also prevents bubbling. And we don't. In this case, we don't want to prevent bubbling for some reason or another. Now you'll see that I called $, and in parentheses I called this .text. Now what this refers to, and there's actually been some stuff going on recently where they actually don't want you to call $sign and in parentheses put this. But for beginners, if you guys are being beginners, you can learn different later on, this refers to whatever you called that function on. So right now, this refers to whatever it is with an ID of Eric. So right now what it's going to do is it's going to change Eric.text to Eric is cool, and it's going to alert take that high school. So when I click this, change the text to Eric is cool, and it alerts take that high school. So what we have now is just a list of some of the basic methods that jQuery gives you. We talked about show. There is wrap, parent, HTML, and val. Parent is really good for DOM traversal. So you can start at an li, and then you can say parent ul, and it will grab that ul, and it will then then if you change .text at the end of that, it will change that ul's text. We all know that you can't change the ul and text of a ul, but in this case, you can traverse the DOM that way. Wrap is really cool. You can call an element like a p, right? And then you can wrap that element with an a tag and give it, an href value of index.html or eric.html, whatever you want, and eric.jpg. It doesn't matter. Whatever you want, you can wrap it in, and as long as you end it with the same code that you started it with, it will be valid. .html will actually set the full HTML. So if I had a p tag or let's say I had an li tag that had a p tag inside of that, I call .html on that li. It will change everything. So I can put in an a tag and whatever I wanted to change the actual HTML of that element. I could put in I'm pretty sure you have to escape your stuff with, and LT and GTs. I'm not exactly sure. But that's why I have the best thing in the entire world on the bottom right, and that's api.jquery.com. If you have a question, you can always go there, type in whatever method you want. So you type in .show, and it will show you every single way to call .show, how you can get things, how you can set things, because that's our next topic. Getting things and setting things with the same with the same function. There are dual functions. Our .text. Before we were using .text, and we were setting the value to something that was in quotations. I can use that same function, but without feeding it foo inside of there in quotes. I can just call open close paren, and I can actually get the value of foo and set it to, let's say a variable. So what I would do to get something is I call something with with empty parentheses. Now, every single function isn't the same. Most functions are like this. If you can actually do a .css and change the CSS of something, but you can also get the CSS of something, but you can't do it with just empty parens. You actually have to feed in like width or something. Again, api.jquery.com is your friend. This is just a very basic thing to get you guys, excited about jQuery. So what I would normally do is I would create a variable called, let's call it myVar, and I would set that variable to p.text. So now myVar equals the same thing as just calling p.text. So now I can use the same method to do this. I change the text to Boberic inside of my p tag. So I start with Eric in p, and then I end with Boberic in p. Now I go to myVar and I set it to Boberic, and then I can set to .text and just call myVar instead of putting it in parentheses, because we don't want to set it to a literal value. We want to set it to a variable value. So in the end, they both end up at the same way. So if you have some code that's generating some new file name or some new attribute to something, you can then set whatever it is to a variable and then set it to the variable by just calling it without parentheses, as long as a variable's been set. So that takes us through our just very basic, getting you to know that there's some basic functions about jQuery. I have the next little bit. I'm going to talk about actually using jQuery plugins, because that for beginners, I think that's the best thing to do, is to learn the basic stuff and then learn about how to use plugins, because plugins are really basically if somebody's created, if you want to do something, somebody's probably already created something to do what you want to do. So rather than coding it yourself, you can find a plugin to do it, and then work on learning how to use jQuery by using that plugin as well. So let's power on through to our plugins. So again, plugins are probably the bread and butter of learning jQuery. So you can trust me on this. And you can quote me as well that if you want to create an animation, effect, or UI component, chances are pretty good that someone else has done your work for you already. That's my quote. And you can find all of the jQuery plugins and search all of the jQuery plugins on plugins.jQuery.com. Now, just a quick note on today's presentation. Again, this is just the very basics of jQuery. jQuery can get well more advanced than it is. We wanted to give you guys just a brief overview of what's going on with jQuery, and we were thinking of possibly, if it's wanted, then we can possibly do like WebExes later on, where we do more advanced stuff, so that we don't have to get everybody all together in one room. We can do we can record the presentations and you can see them later on. So in the initial email we sent out, there was Colorbox, Table Sorter, ListNav, and Qtip. I took Qtip off because of time constraints. And it doesn't have very many options to show you guys what the different options are. So it was really sort of just throw it away. You guys can research that if you want to on your own. So the typical plugin installation is go to plugin.jQuery.com or the plugins website, because a lot of plugins have their own website. Download the stuff that you need. Copy the plugin and its dependencies to your server. If you need to call it, if it has its own CSS, call it CSS. Call jQuery at the bottom of your page. Call your plugin right underneath that, because the jQuery has to load before your plugin can load. Because if you load your plugin before you load jQuery, your code will error out and it will say $ is not defined. What does $sign mean? So once you call jQuery, it knows what $sign means. Then you call your plugin, and then you initialize your plugin. Same way, $, find your selector, which is my plugin container, and then plugin init, which is whatever they tell you. So what we'll do is we'll walk through Colorbox. Colorbox is really cool to do. This goes off of this whole presentation started with Shadowbox. We were talking about it on the listserv, and Shadowbox is really great, but Shadowbox is really bulky. Colorbox is much lighter, it's faster, and I think it looks a lot better than Shadowbox does. They also give you 5 different themes that you can start with, plus they give you the raw AI file, the raw Illustrator file, so that you can actually edit. You can edit your own template, or you can edit your own theme however you want, which you can see right there in the Colorbox AI. So to start off, we go to Colorbox, colorpower.com/colorbox. We click the download button. We download the newest version. He updates this plugin every single point release of jQuery. So when jQuery 1.4 came out in January, this was updated to 1.3.4. When jQuery 1.4.1 came out, he upgraded to 1.3.5. So now it's at 1.4.2. He's at 1.3.6. So every single point release that jQuery does, he releases a new so it fixes any problems. It uses any of the new methods that are being added to it and whatnot. So when you open up the Colorbox zip file that you download, you see this directory structure. Anything that's in the Colorbox directory, the second Colorbox directory, it contains all the JavaScript. Then there is the content directory that contains all the demos, so that you can actually download everything that he demos on his page right on your page. And the examples is all of the themes. So example 1 through example 5 are just all the different themes. They have all the CSS files and all the images. I can't stress enough for every single plugin, and I'm only going to say this once because I don't want to sound like I'm a repeating person, but the thing is read the README. Read the NFO file. Read whatever the documentation for that plugin is, because every single plugin is going to be different. No plugin is ever going to be called the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to extract colorbox-min into our JS plugins folder. Now, there's two different versions. There's the minified version, which is much smaller, and then there's the non-minified version, which actually has, he's commented the code out and everything. So you can actually use that as a reference to find out what the different options are and stuff. He has it really well documented on his website, though. So I'm going to extract the minified JS file to my plugins folder, and I'm going to extract the images folder and the CSS file into my CSS folder, because his CSS references images / whatever images are. So as long as that directory structure, or as long as that file structure is in place, where images is with the same directory as colorbox.css, all your images will work fine. So in the head of my document, I'm going to link to my colorbox CSS. Then in the body of my document, I'm going to link to my full-size JPEG files that I have for my that I want to set colorbox up for, and I'm going to set the rel attribute of them to colorbox, and that's actually how I'm going to reference them with jQuery. And then inside of that, I just have the thumbnail of the image. Again, normally these would have alt tags, width and height, blah blah blah. But just to fit it in the context of the slide, I could only put in a certain amount of things. And right before the ending body tag, we're going to call jQuery, then we're going to call the plugin, and then we're going to create an empty script tag that we're going to fill now. And we're going to fill that with our document ready function, and then inside of that document ready function, we're going to call a, and then in square brackets, rel equals, and then in parentheses or quotations, colorbox. Rel equals colorbox is an advanced CSS 3 selector. jQuery is 100%, I believe 100%, I'm not going to, 90%, let's call it, compatible with CSS 3 selectors. As far as I know, if you have a CSS 3 selector that will select first child, odd, even, what have you, jQuery will be able to find that DOM element. So, in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to select every single one of those anchor tags, because they all have a rel of colorbox. So now, when I click on any one of the thumbnail images that I have listed there, it will pop up a cool color box, and I'll be able to mess around with it. Now, I'm going to get to the demo in a second, but I want to show you what it's like to set options to a plugin. Now, normally, what we did before is we just called colorbox open close paren. That is, these are the default options that colorbox is going to do, and it's going to work. Now, if you want to set default, you want to change the default options to something else. In this case, we want to actually create a slideshow from them. So I can just hit start, and it'll start creating a slideshow. I want the slideshow speed to last 5 seconds because it's in milliseconds. I want the transition, instead of being elastic, which would be like, it would move the thing to whatever size your image is. So if you had a 300 pixel wide image, and then you had a 500 pixel wide image, it would go whoop, and it would elastic out. That's the default. So I want to change that to fade. And I want the fade to last a full second. That's what speed stands for here. So what we do is we pull up here, and this is that thing I was telling you about. Now before, when I clicked this, before colorbox was initialized, I just went to another thing. So this is accessible. Now if I click on Go Gadget colorbox, now when I click on the image, it pulls up and it fades in a really cool, awesome image that I created. I think that it's a really cool unicorn. And then we fade out to rainbows, and then we fade into sparkles. Now the fade lasts a full second. The slide stays on the screen for 5 seconds, and it continues on, and it automatically starts the slideshow. Now I can click stop here, and it will stop the slideshow, and now if I hit start again, it would start the slideshow. So I have all these options that I have. You can see them all on the Colorbox website. And now I can either click on this X here to make it go away, or just like a modal window, I can actually click on the overlay, and it goes away as well. So you have that at your disposal. Now you don't necessarily have to have thumbnail images. You can just have a list of anchor tags. Like he has that on his website as the demo. He just has a list of 3 images, and you click it, or three text links. You click on one link and it pulls up an image. Now you can do it any way you want to do, just as long as you call it with you set a rel attribute to call it on. Now, table sorter is probably one of the cooler things that we do, because before what happened with our old internet site was that even our intranet site is that there's just a lot of tabular information on there, because we have hundreds and hundreds of police officers that are on our website trying to look up different codes for different things. So what we did is we used this table sorter plugin, and what we did is we call it with tablesorter.css. We call that in our head of our document. Then in our HTML, we create a table, we give it an ID, and then we put all of our table stuff in there. Make sure you put a T head and a T body. Make sure that T head only has 1 row, T body has however many you want. And then we call .table sorter after of course we call jQuery first, then we call the jQuery plugin, then we initialize it by calling the ID, air streams, and then call table sorter on it. Now table sorter doesn't have very many options, but one of the coolest options that it has is it has a widget called Zebra, which will actually zebra stripe your rows, so that instead of having just a plain old regular table like this with just like a light blue, this is light blue, and then these are just white. When I hit in a table sorter, I'm actually going to zebra stripe the rows so they're easier to see. You can change the color in the options, and now I can actually click on here, and I will actually sort my table by alphabetical. Now there are all kinds of different things that you can set. So if you wanted numbers to act instead of numbers as letters, so you wanted the number 10 to act as T because it starts with a T, you could set it to that. There's all kinds of different things there. You can also sort by whatever things you have set in your T head, you can sort by that. And the last plugin is ListNav. ListNav is in the same sort of family as table sorter is, in that it allows you to really be able to have very large lists and be able to make them sortable, so that you don't have to have a 20-page long list. You can just sort out to whatever letter you want. So what we do is the same thing as we did with all the other plugins. We call our CSS at the top, we have our HTML at the bottom in the middle, where this one actually requires an ID of whatever your normal ID is, -nav, so that it'll actually create the navigation there. And then you have, then you call the plugin, and then .listNav. Now some options here, show counts. This is the plugin I was telling you about that had problems. Show counts, I set it to false because jQuery 1.4.2, although it's so much faster than 1.3.2, the show counts is broken in this plugin. So you just set that option to false, and then you don't have to worry about that. Like I say, I'm currently in the process of trying to fix that with the plugin author. So hopefully he'll respond to my emails and get this working. Now I have no match text. That's if I'll show you what that means in a second. But if there's no match to whatever letter you click on, it's going to say fail. Now there's also a jQuery cookie plugin that makes cookie creation, deletion, and modification. Yeah, the section symbol, the and sect thing, because that actually is included in the other option. So just to show you what I mean, this one's a little bit harder to explain. So I have a long list of a bunch of different things, of all my dreams. I want to live in a mansion, I want a lot of money, I want to fly in a helicopter. Now this is a really long list, and in order to see all of this stuff, let's just imagine that I didn't just take a bunch of these things and copy and paste them, right? So now I want to make this really easy to navigate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the list nav. Now normally I wouldn't have this underneath the click. Normally I would do this on page load. And now what's going to happen is now I'm currently selected to all. The CSS isn't really showing up here, but currently I'm selected to all, so I can see all of my list items. Now I only want to select the items that are on a 1 through 9, or on a 0 through 9. So now I select 0 through 9, and now I see all of the options for a 100-inch TV. Now if I click on F, I'm going to see all of the options for flying a helicopter. One of the things that has multiple ones is M. So I see mansion, Maserati, mansion, Maserati, mansion, Maserati, because those are all in there. Now if I click on A, since I have no dreams that start with A, it gives me that custom text that I wrote of fail. So now, if I refresh, I actually don't know if I included the plugin here. Let's see. No, I didn't. But what would happen is, again, we wouldn't put this behind a click event. We would have this load as soon as the page loads. So if I clicked on F, and flying a helicopter was selected now. Now if I went back to the page and I had the cookie plugin installed, F would stay still selected. So now, it's very convenient for users that are constantly coming to one page or another, and they only care about things that start with F. Then they're going to see F every time they come on. They don't have to click on F every single time.
Can you change the text that failed to something like not found?
Yes, I'll actually show you how to do that right now. I've hosted all of my code on JSBin, so you can actually see. You can actually play with all the code that I put together.
So you can change that label to whatever you want.
Preview it. Now if I click on A, sorry, there's no dream that starts with that letter. Instead of fail, you can set it to whatever you want.
Just going back when you had the table, you can sort of. Can you filter on that? In other words, I know you can sort it by whatever header you got. Can you filter
Table sorter doesn't have a filter, but there are all kinds of. There's a I think it's jQuery has a filter built into it that you can set up as a. So I could set a field right above dream that I could type in fly, and then it would only have fly there.
Yeah, because I've done that by hand. In other words, we've had these where you have a list of 10,000 different things. I just want to find the ones, sometimes I just want to find by name, sometimes I just want to find the ones that are in Albany.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you can set it 1 letter, 3 letters, 10 letters, however many. That they need to type as a minimum, and then it'll filter by that criteria.
Yep, the table sorter plugin is a very basic plugin. The table sorter gives you sort by header row, alphabetical A through Z or Z through A, and the zebra stripe. Like I say, I think it's jQuery has that built right into it. There's a lot of table sorting, table filtering plugins that are out there. So you're best to find another one that's like this one, but it's, again, table sorter doesn't have that functionality built into it. So I think we're looking like we're done here. So I have a couple references here. First, a reference to Snakes on a Plane. Second is a reference to John Resig's introductory slides. It actually goes in, if you have time. If you look at his stuff, I use a lot of his stuff as a good reference. But he goes in and he teaches you about hover states, because the hover method is totally different than any other method. You actually have to call 2 functions within that for an on and an off. There's all kinds of different things that are available for that. then the jQuery 1.4 cheat sheet. Again, I can't stress enough the API. The forums are really, really great. The jQuery podcast. Again, all of my demos are hosted on JSBin. And what you can do is you can click on this, and it will actually give you the ability to edit the code that I've created, create your own version of that, or even just copy all the code that I did and then paste it into your stuff at work or at home, and it'll run. With the exception of I reference a couple of the plugins that I reference. I've hosted it on our criminal justice website. Those aren't going to be there, so you just have to go to the websites that I provided in the slides, and you can download the plugins that way. So now I went through a couple plugins, I'm gonna head over to John. Thanks.
Thank you.